I wasn't chased by men that night. Shame got there first. A stranger stepped in, but he didn't rescue me with fists. He gave me something my ex never did, a place I belonged. I didn't notice the cold first. I noticed the silence. It was the kind of coastal dark that eats sound. The highway falling away behind me. The smell of salt and wet cedar. The ocean somewhere out there breathing in its sleep. I was halfway across the pull-off when the truck's headlights flared in my periphery and 3 silhouettes spilled out like a bad idea. One of them whistled, low and lazy, the way boys do when they're not boys anymore. I set my jaw, shifted my tote higher on my shoulder, and kept walking like I had a destination, like my feet weren't full of sand and fear and the memory of a door that had closed in my face months earlier. "Hey," one called. "You lost?" I didn't answer. I tightened my grip on the leash looped through my palm. No dog at the end of it now. Just a habit from a gentler life. The second man paced me, boots crunching gravel. "Nice to be out late," he said. Too casual, too practiced. The third stayed behind, a shadow with a cigarette. The SUV that slid into the turnout didn't make a sound until it clicked into park. No screech, no show. The driver's door opened, and a man stepped out like the dark was his to organize. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't posture. He just looked at the 3 and said, "Walk away." The one with the laugh tried it out. Or what? Or you'll find out how bad this night can get. No bravado, only fact. Something in it made the second man look at the first, and the first at the third, and then their courage evaporated like fog in headlamps. They went, smirking, muttering, but they went. The stranger waited until the taillights were small, then turned to me. Up close, his face held the kind of calm that doesn't ask for thanks. He pointed at my car door. "Lock it from the inside when you get in," he said. "Please." I did what he asked because my body had already agreed he was safety. He stepped back, giving me space to pull the door shut. Only then did he speak through the small opening of the window I left down. "Guest house?" he said, nodding toward the darker line of trees beyond the turnout. "There's one behind my shop. It's empty. You don't have to take it." He swallowed, something like embarrassment touching his features. "But you look like someone who could use a door that locks." He didn't ask my name. He didn't offer his. He just waited. I looked at his hands, nicked and clean, the sort of hands people use to put broken things back into a shape that works. My last months had been a collage of borrowed sofas, spare rooms that didn't stay spare, and conversations that sounded polite while they pushed me out. My chest hurt where I hold shame. "A door that locks," I said, like I was tasting the words. "I'm Marcus," he said. "There's a heater and tea, that's all. You won't owe me anything." He was wrong about that last part, but I didn't argue. I followed his taillights through a thin stand of spruce to a gravel lane and then to a clearing with 2 buildings. A long, low shop that smelled faintly of resin even from the car, and a small one-room structure set back beneath a leaning pine. The ocean was a hush in the distance. He parked, motioned to the smaller door, and stood aside while I stepped in. Heat met me politely, not too much, with the faint ticking sound of a baseboard heater doing its simple job. Someone had swept the floor that morning. A kettle sat on the counter. A folded quilt waited at the foot of a narrow bed like a promise. Marcus stayed in the doorway. "There's a deadbolt," he said, "and a chain. The roof creaks when the wind shifts. That's normal." I turned in a slow circle. This was not luxury. This was dignity. "Thank you," I said, the words too small for the relief that moved through me like warmth. He nodded once. "I'll be in the shop at 6, he said. "If you want to head out at first light, I can check your oil." He left then. The door closed, and I slid the bolt with 2 fingers, hearing it seat solidly in the frame. My shoulders dropped. I didn't cry. I just listened to the small noises of a space that belonged to nobody but me for a night. The hiss of the heater, the kettle sighing into stillness, the soft groan of the wind playing with the pine. I slept with one hand on the quilt and the other on my bag, the way I had learned to sleep since the day I learned a ring doesn't keep you. In the morning, there was a note on the counter. Tea, it said, an arrow pointing at a tin. Next to it, a mug with a boat painted on its side. I made water boil and tried not to remember all the times I'd made water boil for the wrong people. In the shop, Marcus was already working, music so low it was almost only rhythm. He didn't ask why I hadn't left. He offered me a broom and a smile that didn't weigh anything. Sweeping's meditative, he said, and honest. The shop loved boats, not yachts, boats that work for a living, hulls on cradles, ropes coiled with pride. The place smelled like cedar and patience. I swept sawdust into small golden continents while Marcus planed a board to a soft whisper and measured twice before he cut. We didn't talk much. He was one of those men who trust that silence is not a problem to solve. At lunch, he wiped his hands and poured 2 cups of black coffee. My folks are in Portland, he said, the way a person mentions weather. My dad's had a year. Nothing dramatic. Just a year. He looked out toward the guest house, as if the roofline held a map. They think I'm alone because I am. Their kind of math says a man my age should have more. His mouth tilted. I'm not sure what more means. More to me had once meant a joint bank account, a drawer with space for my sweaters, a future tense people were proud to say out loud. Then came the text messages I wasn't meant to see, the family portrait I wasn't invited into, and the one dinner where a mother smiled and asked if I'd thought about finishing my degree before distracting their son from the trajectory he's earned. I had sat in that chair and felt myself getting smaller without moving at all. In the guest house that evening, someone had left paper and 2 pencils on the table. Nicholson HB, the good kind that makes a soft line even when your hand is tired. There was no note, just the offering. I sharpened one and drew the pine that leaned like a man listening, the way the roofline held its breath against the wind, the way the coastline here didn't ask for your performance, only your respect. The pencil moved like the part of me I thought I'd left behind in a box. Days arrived and left with rhythm. Sweep, wipe, organize, break for coffee, draw a little, sleep without bargaining with the dark. The shape of Marcus's kindness was practical, not ornamental. A toolbox appeared beneath the sink with a new sponge stacked on top. A hook hung by the door so my bag didn't have to sit on the floor. No speeches, no interest rate. The quiet grew between us like something planted on purpose. It was a Thursday when she walked into the shop. She wore her hair the way magazine women wear their hair, and her mouth made friendly shapes that didn't reach her eyes. "Marcus," she sang, and then to me, "Oh, hello." It was that particular hello some women are trained to do in country clubs, designed to be both polite and measuring. "We missed you at Westfield's event," she added, turning back to Marcus without waiting for an answer. "Your reputation is suffering." He wiped his hands. "It'll survive," he said. He introduced us, barely. Savannah. Lena. Her gaze skimmed me, caught on my thrift store jacket, and moved on like my body was a cautionary tale. "How are your parents?" she asked Marcus, real concern slipping under the gloss. He nodded, a grateful moment. "Holding steady." She lowered her voice. "They worry about you," she said. "Being alone can look like a choice, or like you can't keep something steady." Her eyes flicked toward me as if my presence argued her point. I felt my chest go hot and then cold, the way it always does when the room asks, "Who let her in?" I excused myself before my hands gave me away. In the guest house, I sat on the bed and looked at the pencil shavings in the trash like they were evidence of a crime. Shame is efficient. It will use anything handy. I packed in the practiced way of someone who's been told a few times too many that the couch is needed again for someone else's cousin. I wrote a note to Marcus. Thank you for the roof and the tea. You've been kind. I don't want to complicate your life. When he knocked, I almost didn't open the door. He stepped in, his hat in his hand like a man entering a church. He looked at the bag, then at my face. Is it something I did? No, I said, which was true and not. It's what I am in rooms like that. What are you in rooms like that? He asked, genuinely asking. An explanation someone else has to make, I said. A reputation they have to adjust for. I don't belong to anybody's narrative that makes them look good. He leaned against the doorframe and listened to the wind push at the pine. I need your help, he said finally. It was the last thing I expected. My parents want to see me Saturday in Portland. My dad's been counting my milestones like they're report cards. They rest easier when they can picture me as settled. He met my eyes. Would you be willing to pretend to be my fiancé? Just for the weekend. We'll set rules. You call the shots. If you're uncomfortable, I'll drive you home this second. My mouth opened and closed. He wasn't offering me a fairy tale. He was offering a contract. Why me? I asked. Because you don't lie to yourself, he said. I can hear it when you sweep. That was ridiculous. And also the truest thing anyone had said to me in a year. Ground rules, I said. No touching unless we check in with our eyes first. No stories about my past. And if your father asks me anything I can't answer without lying, I'll say I need air and walk outside. His shoulders lowered. Done, he said. And if anyone makes you feel small, we leave. We drove to Portland on a Saturday that smelled like rain thinking about it. The city unfurled itself around us in bridges and water, that blue-gray light that makes every brick look like it has a biography. His parents lived in a low craftsman with a porch that was probably warm in summer. His mother opened the door like she'd been waiting since he was born. Marcus, she said, and then, oh, as she took me in, but not the oh I was used to. Come in, you must be freezing. Dinner was a slow river. His father asked questions like he respected the answers. His mother told stories in which Marcus was always the hero in a quiet way. I learned he'd rebuilt a neighbor's stairs after a storm and refused payment. He learned I used to draw faces on napkins to keep from crying in public. Between the soup and the roast, the doorbell rang and Savannah breezed in with a casserole and the smell of an expensive candle. She kissed Marcus's mother's cheek, complimented the table, and slid into the empty seat like she had reserved it with her name. We're all so proud of you, she told Marcus. Even when you don't show up for your own life. I let the words pass through me like wind through a fence. What snagged, though, was the glance she gave me when she lifted her wine. Tiny, surgical, the sort that says, you and I both know how this ends. I smiled at her, the way women learn to smile when they've had to teach themselves not to apologize for existing. Marcus's mother saw it. The smile, the tightness under it. She touched my wrist like she could remove a splinter. Do you like pie, Lena? She asked. I made the blueberry you can only get right when you grew up here. In the kitchen, she handed me a towel and let me dry dishes while she rinsed. He's a good man, she said, not looking up, the faucet whispering. He thinks he has to fix everything before he brings it home. Sometimes bringing it home is how it gets fixed. I didn't know what to do with that kindness. I folded it carefully, like cloth, and tucked it away. Back at the table, Savannah leaned into a story about the Westfield Gala and how donors decide where money should go based on optics. She didn't say my name in the sentence where optics lived, but she didn't have to. The father's eyes found mine, steady as a dog post. Optics, he said, rolling the word like a cheap marble. I prefer outcomes. When the evening ended, Marcus's mother hugged me like she was redistributing warmth she had to spare. At the door, Savannah's smile sharpened. "Congratulations," she said, her tone smooth. "I hope you two match what you promise." In the car, the words gathered around my throat like a scarf too tight. Marcus drove with both hands resting easy, like he trusted the road even when it curved. "You did fine," he said. "Not a compliment, just a fact. They like you." "That's not the problem," I said. "The problem is, I heard what I always hear. This only works if I become something I'm not fast enough to impress people who score other people like it's sport." "We don't have to do this again," he said. "We don't have to do anything that hurts you." Hurt is funny. It can feel like a bruise you press to check if it's still there. "I'll stay tonight," I said. "I'll sweep tomorrow, and then I think I'll go. You can tell them we realized we were better as friends. It's a lie that keeps everybody's furniture in place." His jaw tightened. He didn't argue. He just nodded like a man who has decided to build a thing quietly, rather than swing a hammer in the dark. Back in Newport, the guest house felt like a borrowed dress I had worn without permission. I packed slowly, folding the quilt as if it had done me a favor, and I owed it respect. I left the note on the pillow, "Thank you, I'll go," and sat on the edge of the bed, waiting for the heater to click one last time. I was almost to the door when I heard his steps on the gravel, equal and unhurried, like he knew rushing would make something break. He knocked once and waited. "Come in," I said, and he did, holding nothing in his hands so I wouldn't feel cornered by gifts. "I don't want to pretend," he said. No introduction, no polite throat clearing. His voice was a steady line. "I thought pretense would make my dad worry less, but it only made you worry more. I don't want you for an explanation. I want you because the room feels like a place when you're in it." "That's not a proposal," I said, my mouth dry. "It's not," he agreed. "It's a request to see if you want the kind of life where nobody asks you to be smaller so they can look bigger. We can figure out the rest. Or we can decide it's too much and we walk away, and I will still be grateful I got to be the person who said, 'Lock your door from the inside,' the night you needed to hear it." I looked at him and saw the road pull off again, the line of men, the way he'd simply offered me back to myself. "If we do this," I said, "we do it without performance. If I draw, it's because my hands can't help it. If you show me to your parents, it's because I am a person you already chose, not a piece in a story you're trying to sell." "Deal," he said, and the way he said it told me he knew the price of cheap deals and had stopped taking them a long time ago. I didn't say yes in words. I hung my bag back on the hook he'd installed by the door. I unfolded the quilt and shook it open like a flag that didn't have to prove anything. The wind moved through the pine outside, and the roof answered with a soft, old house sound that meant, "I've been here through worse." Marcus stepped back into the dark and let the door close on his hand to make sure it didn't slam. When the bolt slid into place, it sounded less like a lock this time, and more like a promise I was making to myself first. I woke before the alarm because the roof was speaking again. Pine needles whispering their low grammar, the wind rearranging itself around the eaves. Morning makes honest promises the night can't keep. I put on coffee in the tiny kitchen and read the note I'd left on the pillow, like it had been written by a braver version of me. "Thank you. I'll go." The kettle clicked off. My chest answered with a smaller sound. "Not yet." Marcus waited outside with his elbows on the bed of the truck like he didn't want to edit the day before it started. "I meant what I said," he told the horizon first, then me. "No pretending. Not with us. Not with them." "You don't owe me a speech," I said, but my voice softened around the words. "You owe yourself an answer." He smiled without showing teeth. "The answer is, I want you here, if you want to be here. Not because of optics, because of oxygen. We kept the workday ordinary on purpose. He planned a length of cedar until it learned the shape his hands asked for. I swept the floor and lined up boxes against the wall so they made a simple geometry. At lunch, he handed me a sandwich and didn't watch me eat it, which is its own kind of manners. "My dad called," he said. "He likes you." He won't say it that way. He said, "The girl sees. People who see end up steady." That was the language he had. I liked the language he had, I said. In the afternoon, a squall pushed across the water and rattled the shop doors. Thunder somewhere far off made the hulls on their cradles hum a note I felt in my ribs. I sketched the boats, their patience, their weather knowledge, the way they look simple only because they carry someone else's life daily. Marcus watched and shook his head, not in refusal, but in recognition. "I'd forgotten that line exists," he said, pointing to the curve I'd laid down with a soft pencil. "It's the one I sand for and never quite find." He leaned back on his heels. "I want other people to see it." "Then we'll let them," I said, surprising myself with the plural. The word didn't ask permission. It just arrived. Savannah came late in the day, wind at her back, perfume like a high note. "Emergency," she announced with a smile that pretended to be a joke. "Westfield moved the donor walk through to Sunday. They'll be touring the marina. Marcus, we need visual stories. Process, craft, community. We need you in the frame." He set down his pencil and wiped his hands. "Sunday's not good." She threw up her hands, good-natured on the surface. "You avoid sunlight? This is exactly what we talked about at dinner, showing up for your own life." He glanced at me, not for a cue, just to place himself. I saw him choose without drama. "I'll be with my family," he said. "And mine." The word landed like an anchor settling. Savannah's eyes flicked, quick calculus. "Of course," she said. "Another time." She left with a careful wave that made no promises. That night, the guest house felt less like a borrowed room and more like a place a person could make decisions in. We sat at the small table and made rules because rules are kindness when you mean to keep someone. No pretending for parents. No smoothing over in public what we haven't said in private. If either of us hears the old shame voice, we say it out loud so it shrinks in air. "You're allowed to leave," he said, pen hovering like a notary. "Anytime, with no story required." "You're allowed to be wrong," I said, out loud, without me keeping score. "Deal," he said again, and this time it sounded like a door opening instead of a contract signing. We didn't move fast. We moved accurately. His mother called and invited us to Sunday dinner with the kind of warmth that isn't manipulation. "He's making his famous roast," she said, by which she meant his father would pretend he never follows a recipe and secretly follow a recipe. "There's blueberry pie cooling." There's always blueberry pie. I drove us to Portland because I liked the way the road unwinds under the bridge, because choosing the route felt like choosing something larger. He rested a hand on the console, not touching mine, just being available, and the city greeted us with its river and its practical light. At the door, his mother pulled me into a hug that didn't make a measurement first. "I washed the quilt you liked," she whispered near my ear like a conspiracy. "It's in the front room if you get cold." We ate. We told the truth at a speed human beings can stand. His father asked about work and listened when I said, "I sweep," like sweeping was a respectable theology. After dishes, he and I carried wood to the rack by the back door. "You'll get char on your sleeves," he warned, a smile in it. "I own nothing a little ash can't improve," I said. He stopped, looking at me the way men who have built things look at a board before they cut it, gauging grain, angles, where the strength runs. "You got taught to leave before you got taught to stay," he said, not unkind. "You can unlearn that. It takes two people." Inside, the doorbell rang again. Westfield's assistant with a folder and Savannah's perfume still printed on the paper. "Just dropping the revised schedule," she said, eyes scanning the room like it owed her details. Her gaze landed on the drawing I'd left on the hall table, pencil lines of the pine and the guest house roof. "Oh," she said lightly. "You're drawing again." "I never stopped," I said. I said the truth in a voice too plain to argue with. "You should show," she replied, almost reflexive. "We're mounting a local hands exhibit in 6 weeks. Process pieces, shop stories. If Marcus insists on hiding from optics, at least let your work be seen." Her tone had the old shape, sugar laid over a dare, but the idea fit something that had already been growing in me. I looked at Marcus's mother. She was already nodding. "We'll bring pie," she said, solving a logistical question we hadn't asked. When the assistant left, the room exhaled. Marcus's father carried in wood and set it carefully, like each piece had a name. "Outcomes over optics," he said, to nobody in particular, and the house agreed. We drove home through weather that changed its mind 3 times. The sky rehearsing spring, then winter, then honesty. In the guest house, I sketched until my hand cramped, then kept going because the line had more to say. Marcus made tea and slid it near my elbow the way good men do, with the handle turned toward your grip. We didn't talk about whether what we had now counted as a relationship. We let it be one by behaving like people in one behave when they mean to keep each other. 3 weeks later, we took 3 drawings to a co-op gallery. A friend of his mother ran on a quiet street that smelled like bread and rain. We hung the pine and the guest house roof and a boat hull caught mid-curve. The graphite so soft it looked like breath. The night of the opening, people arrived with umbrellas like modest flags. They stood in front of the drawings and tilted their heads and had the expressions people get when they've been reminded of something they didn't know they'd lost. Savannah came with 2 donors and a dress that knew how to be looked at. She stopped in front of the guest house roof and went very still. For a second, the practiced smile left her face, and the person under it was just a woman who recognized shelter when she saw it. "It's good," she said to me, and this time, sincerity won the vote in her voice. "It's very good." "Thank you," I said, and let the compliment stand without turning it into an apology. Marcus's parents arrived late because his mother had rebaked the pie after the first one cracked. She pressed a warm box into my hands like a medal. "If you sell one," she said, "we eat this in the truck on the way home." We sold 2. A couple from Astoria who ran a small charter bought the boat hull, and a woman with a silver braid and paint under her nails bought the guest house roof. "I know that sound," she said, tapping the glass near the darkest line. "I've slept under it." "It means you made it through another night." We did not stage anything for photographs, though someone took some. We did not perform gratitude. We felt it, and it showed. After, while the gallery lights did their last warm thing, Marcus stood behind me and looked at the empty places on the wall where paper had been. "I don't feel like I fixed anything," he said quietly. "I feel like I finally put something down." "Me too," I said. The room held our voices like it approved. On the drive back to the coast, he took the long way, not to prolong a moment, but to respect that changing a life deserves a wider curve on the map. His hand found mine and asked a question that didn't need words. I answered by not moving away. The night was clear enough to see a few scraped stars. "Say it," he said, after a mile, not insisting, just inviting. "I'm not your pretend anything," I said. "I'm your real one, if you want that." "I do," he said, simple as a well-cut joint that sits right the first time. "I do." At home, he carried the pie in and then forgot to set it down, because we were laughing at nothing like teenagers who'd found a shortcut no one else had paved. The guest house felt larger because I could imagine winter in it and still feel brave. We ate pie out of the tin with 2 forks, like the rules were different for people who had chosen each other. The wind gave the roof a familiar nudge. It answered with that soft sound again. I've been here through worse. Spring walked in one morning with its hands in its pockets. The shop opened its doors to air that didn't bite. I taught a Saturday sketch group on the back bench, 3 kids with too much pencil pressure, and a fisherman who wanted to draw his boat to remember it after he sold her. Marcus measured and cut, and sometimes looked up just to count the ways the day was doing what days are for. The guest house acquired small additions: a proper lamp, a table with legs that didn't wobble, a shelf for the tin of tea that meant we were staying. Savannah stopped by once more with a brochure for a larger show in late summer. "We could give you a wall," she said, meaning it like an offering rather than a leverage point. "No speeches," she added, glancing at me with a ghost smile. "Just a wall." "A wall is enough," I said. She nodded. "It usually is, when the work is true." Marcus's father came by to help fit a new door on the shop. He watched us mark the hinge mortises, then took the chisel and made a small adjustment that made the whole thing easier. "Most of it's alignment," he said to his son, but he meant the rest of our lives. When they hung the door, it swung and settled, and latched with a sound I wanted to sketch. That night, after the light did its long, slow fade across the water, Marcus and I sat on the stoop with mugs going cold, and the pine leaning like it had a joke. "I don't miss pretending," he said. "I don't miss apologizing," I said. "If you ever do," he added, "we stop and fix it before we bring it home." "We already brought it home?" I said. "Then we keep it fixed," he replied, and we were quiet for a long, easy time. The gallery kept the 3rd drawing, a consignment, the owner said, to see if the right person found it. I didn't worry. Right has its own timing. One afternoon, a woman came in who had the look of someone solving a private math. Brows knit, mouth stubborn. She stood in front of the pine for 10 minutes without moving. When she turned, her eyes were clear in the way eyes are when their owner has chosen the next thing. "That one," she told the manager. "I'm buying that one." I wasn't there, but the owner told me later. She said she knew that wind, and she needed to see it at night above her kitchen table, the owner said. She said it sounded like survival. When Marcus told his parents we'd decided, we didn't stage it over dinner. We set it in the driveway with the tailgate down and the dog from the neighbor's yard wandering over like a witness. His father shook my hand the way men do when they mean to say a lot with not many words. His mother cried a little and then laughed because she spills emotion like a good cook spills flour. She gave me the quilt, not to borrow anymore, but to keep. We didn't throw rice or take pictures on a beach. We fixed a loose stair on the guest house and replaced a screen and planted rosemary in a terracotta pot that would survive the coastal air. At night, we locked the door from the inside because that's what the body needs to hear sometimes. In the morning, we opened it and let work and weather walk in. Sometimes I wake in the dark and listen for old footsteps that aren't coming. I name the differences. This is a roof that complains in friendly ways. This is a man whose silence is not a punishment. This is a life that doesn't require me to shrink to fit somebody else's frame. Shame still knows my address, but it doesn't have a key anymore. On the wall by the bed, the drawing of the guest house roof hangs in a simple frame. The graphite sheen catches the lamp at an angle and makes the line look wet, like the world just rained and got cleaner. Marcus says it reminds him that most shelters start as an idea and then you build them, one measured piece at a time. I say it reminds me that I wasn't chased by men that night. Shame got there first, and a stranger handed me back a place to belong. He smiles at that, then at me, and replies, "Not a stranger anymore." And in the small, honest dark between the pine and the ocean, the house agrees.